Good evening. We are coming to you live across all of our NCN platforms on television, radio, and social media. The government of Guyana and the state of Palestine formally established diplomatic relations on February 21, 2013. In January 2011, Guyana became the first CARICOM country to formally recognize the state of Palestine as a free, independent, and sovereign state based on its 1967 borders. On November 10, 1975, the United Nations decided to establish a committee on the exercise of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people. Guyana is a member of that committee. Joining me in studio at this time are some members of the bureau of that committee, who essentially represent the committee. I have in studio with me at this time Ambassador Sheikh Niang, the permanent representative of Senegal to the United Nations and chair of the committee. We also have Ambassador Riyad Mansour, the permanent observer of the State of Palestine to the United Nations, as well as Ambassador Ernesto Sobrano Guzman, the permanent representative of Cuba to the United Nations and also a vice chair on the Bureau. Thank you all for taking time out to be here, joining me on this discussion as we talk a little bit about some of the developments in Palestine, as well as efforts here locally in Guyana and what we have done as a people to contribute to the much relief that is needed. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
I'd like us to start this discussion this evening by first understanding what sparked the international system to respond to the situation this way. Essentially, what sparked the creation of this body, of this committee, of this bureau of the committee? So we'll start with you, Ambassador.
Yeah, thank you, Travis, for having us. We are very honored to be here in Guyana, which is a country which is a strong supporter of the Palestinian cause. Both the government and the people of Guyana are strongly behind that cause. And as we have been told, and as we have also been able to notice, the Palestinian cause is a national cause. It is a cause which unites all Guyanese. So we are very proud and very happy to be here. So the committee was established, as you said, in 1975, following a long series of turmoil and problems and even wars in the region. The people of Palestine being denied of the nationhood, and the United Nations decided to establish the committee in 1975. And to strengthen the action of the committee, the Secretariat of the United Nations established also a special unit to support the activities of the committee. And the special unit was later transformed into a full division with members coming from Secretariat just to support the action of the committee. The committee's main role is to make sure that the Palestinian rights are promoted, that they can try to establish all the rights of the Palestinians, right of return, right of self-determination, and also to help the assistance of the refugees, with the refugees, and basically to make sure that the nationhood of Palestine can be restored.
Okay. So basically, in terms of your program of work for the committee, I know there's a series of mandates that you have to fulfill. Can you perhaps get a little bit in depth on the program of work, and even for this year, what you were able to achieve?
Okay, our program of work consists of a series of activities. For example, we have delegation visits, which is one of them. That's why we have decided to come to Guyana and to Trinidad. Before coming here, we were in Trinidad. We organize delegation visits every year. We organize conferences to raise awareness. We organize also a special conference on Jerusalem. Every year we do it. So all activities leading to canvassing the Palestinian cause are done. There is not a limited, let's say, number of activities we do. So all we can do, we do it in order to defend and promote the Palestinian rights. And the Bureau meets very regularly to define the program of work.
So are these delegation visits that you alluded to only for sensitization purposes? Perhaps if we could go a bit more in depth, do you also strive to visit other nations who might not recognize the state of Palestine to do advocacy work to ensure that they understand the magnitude of what is happening?
Yes, typically what we do, we go and visit countries where we think that efforts need to be made to really advance the cause of the Palestinians. But this visit in Guyana is not like, let's say, following the same, let's say, rules, because we have come here particularly to mainly acknowledge our recognition, our gratitude to the government of Guyana. Generally, when we go somewhere, we go and canvass with the government, with the parliament. But it's because you have done so very good things about Palestine, you have so much supported the cause, that we deemed it important for us to come and made our recognition and our gratitude known. And when before coming here, we were convinced that we were going to be met with open arms, with also the enthusiasm. But we never imagined that the level of support was so high, even within the government. And we were really completely impressed by that high level of support. We've been to many countries to meet with governments which are supporting fully or supporting very weakly, but we have never seen, I'm telling you, it's not because I just want to please you, we have never seen that high level of support coming from all walks of life here, coming from the executive, the legislative, coming from the man of the street. So, and even one thing which is a testimony to that is the support you are always giving to UNRWA, both from the government and from the public. And recently you raised an impressive amount of money for a population which is yours. I think the amount was very big, and we are really impressed. So this is a visit to say basically thank you.
And I would like to say thank you as well for acknowledging the efforts of the government of Guyana as well as the people. We know just a few moons ago we had the 27th night of Ramadan, which that we were able to raise over 110 million. We'll get a little bit into that a little later into the program. I'd actually like to engage
May
Ambassador.
I just add
Sure.
you engage me?
Sure.
Of course, the committee came into being through a resolution in 1975. And it was a translation to the fact that the year before, in 1974, that the Palestine Liberation Organization, through its Chairman Arafat, came to the General Assembly and gave his famous speech, "Don't allow the green branch that I'm holding drop from my hand." But once the PLO was invited to be representing the Palestinian people after summits in the Arab countries, acknowledging that the Palestine Liberation Organization is the sole and legitimate representative of the Palestinian people, and at that time, the President of the General Assembly was Abdelaziz Bouteflika, who was the Foreign Minister of Algeria, later on became the President of Algeria, invited the PLO to become an observer in the General Assembly of the United Nations through a resolution. The second resolution was adopted by the General Assembly, Resolution 3236. It reaffirmed the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including their right to self-determination, to statehood, and to the right of the refugees to return to their homes and properties. So based on that resolution, advocating and receiving support from the General Assembly to the attainment of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, the wiser and older diplomats from the people that are around this table and other, the following year, they said it should make sense to establish a committee in the General Assembly, mandated by the General Assembly, to carry the details of helping the Palestinian people to attain their inalienable rights. Now, with regard to the program, of course the program get adjusted according to the changing reality of the Palestinian people. Sometimes there might be heavy emphasis on lobbying, let's say, countries in Europe who might have taken positions that are not conducive to advancing, the cause of peace. So we would go and engage the government, engage the parliament, engage public opinions in order to play a role in trying to, adjust public opinion. When things move in other directions, and then there is a need and usefulness of more countries to recognize the state of Palestine, then that would be included in the program. All these are details and specifics, but are details advancing at each stage the attainment of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people.
Thank you for that, Ambassador Mansour. It actually lays the way for my question to you. I mean, we see the images there in the media, we see photos. I mean, you have a connection there, perhaps family, friends in the state of Palestine. Can we understand or connect us, like what is really happening on the ground right now? And it's a two-part. You mentioned that the program of work looks different. I know that in the year 2024, it looks very, very different than 10 years ago. So how is the committee as well adjusting to dealing with the dynamics and the changing dynamics of what is currently happening in Palestine?
I'll start with the last part of your question.
Sure.
Since, this aggression that took place close to 200 days ago, almost 7 months, the program of the committee adjusted along with all political forces in the United Nations, in which we were able to unify the Arab group, the Islamic group, the non-aligned movement, the African group, the friends in all corners of the globe around 3 objectives. The objectives is ceasefire, to stop the fighting, and to save lives of the Palestinians, since the situation is so horrific in terms of the losses of large number of Palestinians, including children and women and the elderly, who constitute about 70% of approximately 35,000 Palestinians that have been killed during the duration of these 6 months plus, and 80,000 injured and 17,000 orphans, children. So the situation is so horrific. Almost the entire population have been displaced from one part to the other part of the Gaza Strip. No place is safe. Almost 70% of the dwellings, the houses, the infrastructure destroyed. Almost all of the hospitals, and we have about 30 of them in the Gaza Strip, either completely destroyed or significantly damaged, that it hardly can carry its mandate in providing for the people the medical services they need. Then the adjustment for the committee is to join this huge front, demanding day in, day out in the Security Council, in the General Assembly, everywhere, that what we need is an immediate ceasefire. And therefore, you see this adjustment, that this is the key thing. We need to save the lives of the Palestinians. We need to send humanitarian assistance to them to the scale of their need in all parts of the Gaza Strip. And we need to stop this crime against humanity of forced transfer away from their homes and properties, with the danger of pushing them into Egypt and the danger of storming Rafah, and therefore creating additional atrocities and crimes, and maybe replicating the Nakba that inflicted upon the Palestinian people in 1948 to have another Nakba. So that you see, now we are in the midst of, telling everyone about this tragic reality, this genocidal war against the Palestinian people, particularly in the Gaza Strip, but also in the hands of extreme terrorist settlers who are protected by the Israeli army in the West Bank, who are terrorizing the villages and the towns that are adjacent to the illegal settlements in the occupied West Bank and in East Jerusalem. So these are the new realities. Therefore, these are the new responsibilities and part of the program of the committee as we move forward.
You know, you mentioned there displacement of people, and I think we see the images, yes, but we don't quite understand. Looking at a map of Palestine, seeing the West Bank that you said, how far it is away, and then it cuts away. So persons who might have families in the West Bank, to get across there, they have to seek permission. They have to, which might be denied in some cases. Let us talk a little bit about how do we really achieve this ceasefire and the role of the committee in ensuring the ceasefire can obtain.
I will get to the ceasefire, but the reality mainly in the Gaza Strip, which is a small sleeve of land that is approximately in length does not exceed 40 kilometers, and in depth it is maximum 10 kilometers, where you have 2.3 million civilians living in that small piece of land, one of the highest concentration of humans in per square kilometers. Now the devastation is beyond description. You say that you see pictures on television or in newspapers, but officials from the United Nations who are privileged that were able to go and visit, particularly the northern part of Gaza, they say no matter what you read, no matter how many pictures you see and clips of reporting by journalists or individuals, reality is much more horrifying than what you see. It is beyond description in terms of the level of this criminality that has been imposed on the Palestinian people. There is no safe place in the Gaza Strip. There is no food. There is famine. There are no hospitals. Injured people are dying either from hunger or lack of medicine, in addition to those who do not have a safe place to go to because of the bombardment, the artillery, the drones, all weapons of killing people are being unleashed against our people in the Gaza Strip. Then, besides that, and we are all one family, regardless whether part of us in Gaza or part of us in the West Bank or East Jerusalem or other parts, yet, it is as a result of this war, they don't allow travel from Gaza to the West Bank or the remaining part of the occupied territories and vice versa, because Gaza is a military zone. Even the injured people, the lucky ones, that were able to leave the Gaza Strip through the Rafah crossing and going to Al Arish airport to be flown to some of the Arab countries and beyond to be treated, children and some of the leftover of their families, is that they cannot come to be joining their relatives in the West Bank and in East Jerusalem. And in our culture, that if a child lost the family, then other relatives, including distant relatives, would be responsible for taking care of them and taking them in their house and, playing a role of substituting for their immediate, relatives. That doesn't exist as an option for us because of this horrific war that has been unleashed against our people in the Gaza Strip, mainly.
Ambassador Guzman, I'd like to rope you into the conversation at this point, being the permanent representative of Cuba to the UN and also a vice chair. What is the position of the government and the people of Cuba as it relates to what is happening in Palestine at this moment?
Well, good evening, and let me join my colleagues to express my gratitude to having us here and to give us the chance to talk directly with the Guyanese people. As a member of the United Nations, and also as a small country that also suffered the aggression of the main power, Cuba has been always supporting the Palestinian cause. Cuba was one of the first country to recognize Palestinian state as an independent state, and we have been supporting the cause of the Palestinian people, and also we have been always supporting the right of the Palestinian people to the self-determination, to the return of the refugee, and to live in peace. We have been also supporting the two-state solution, you know, that allow them to live in peace and to create all the conditions to give all the welfare for their population, you know. So our position is a long-standing position of supporting the Palestinian question, and it's a position of principle, you know. That's something that we really believe in. We have been fighting for a long time, and we will do as at the end of the moment that we may hopefully sooner than later we get those objectives and goals that we have mentioned before.
Okay. You referenced there that two-state solution. It is something that we have been hearing a lot recently. Can you explain what that means?
Well, you know, I'm sure that Ambassador Mansour will be the best person to add about that. But if you want to get a peaceful solution, you need the two-state solution that have a conversation, that have negotiate both from equals, just to get the final solution of this problem. It is not possible to get a solution when one side don't recognize the other one. So you don't have a counterpart where you can talk and get a solution. According to the international law, and according also to the Charter of the United Nations, the Palestinian state, they have the right to exist. They have the right to be recognized as a full member of the United Nations, and also according to the resolutions that were taken many years before, when there was the partition, you know. So I think that no one can think even to a permanent solution of this situation if you don't have an independent and Palestinian state.
Okay. Ambassador Mansour, I'll allow you to perhaps expound a little bit more on it, but I wanted to add another element, because another thing that we've been hearing about is this talk about the question of Palestine. So what is that question in the global context, as well as underscoring what this two-state solution would look like?
The question of Palestine is a question that was put on the agenda of the United Nations since its creation. And in fact, it was on the table and the agenda of the League of Nations before the United Nations, which basically, when England came to colonize and to impose its mandate on Palestine after World War I, then in the resolutions of the League of Nations almost 100 years ago, England, you know, because it was the superpower of the time, and they put in a fancy way their role as if they are the saviors of humanity. They said, you know, that they had resolutions adopted in the League of Nations that England is supposed to help the Palestinian people with all of its components, you know, meaning Palestinian Arabs, Jews, Christians, all of them, that England was supposed to help us to be prepared for independence and to rule ourselves. They call it the mandate. So then, when World War II came, and England decided in 1947 to terminate its mandate, which theoretically was supposed to be that we are ready for independence. As all countries who were under colonial control, the colonial power said that we are leaving and you are free to determine for yourself how to run your affairs in your own independent state. In our case, instead of England doing that to us, England decided to throw the keys of Palestine in the lap of the General Assembly of the United Nations. And instead of the General Assembly throwing the key back in the face of England and telling them, You prepare them for independence. They are ready for independence because we were considered as class A of readiness for independence. Give them independence and let them settle their own issues their own way. The General Assembly said, we are going to interfere in the question of Palestine, and proposed the partition of Palestine into two states. That's in 1947. There is a famous resolution in the General Assembly of the United Nations by the number of 181. That is known as the Partition Plan Resolution, which the General Assembly came to the conclusion that the two communities in Palestine, the Palestinian Arabs and the Jews, they cannot live together because there is fighting and conflict. So as a transitional stage, they proposed, is to allow them to separate in two states in Palestine. One, an Arab state, Palestinian, and the other one is a Jewish state that became Israel. So that was the plan. And these two states to have an economic union until the conditions that led to the partition to evaporate, so that they can live together in one state with harmony, like the harmony that you have in your fabulous country between everyone. Of course, things did not go in that direction, and things got more complicated. Of course, Israel became a member state and joined the United Nations as a member state after they failed the first time in 1948, but they were able to meet the conditions that the international community asked them to do, which basically implement Resolution 181, the partition plan, and implement Resolution 194 to allow the hundreds of thousands of refugees as a result of the war of 1948 or the Nakba to return to their homes. So the basis of the two-state solution is rooted in that resolution by the international community, not by the choice of the two fighting parties. But the international community, for the first time in its history, decided to tailor a solution for the people in Palestine of their two components. Therefore, we say, since the UN got involved in our issue from the beginning, then it is the duty of the UN to complete this exercise to its end. How do they complete it? They complete it by allowing the other state, which declared independence in 1988, to become a full member in the UN, so that we have two states equal, although the land is not equal. But nevertheless, that's part of the historic compromise that we, the Palestinian people, through our political maturity, accepted, that we want to see the independence of our state, and we accepted that the land would be on 22% of Palestine versus the more than 44% that was allotted to us according to the partition plan. So all these things is the Palestine question, and it's continued. And the two-state solution legislated in the General Assembly when the majority of member states were from your region at that time. Initially, the majority were opposing it. When enough armed twisting took place in second and third rounds, they were able to secure enough votes to adopt the partition plan. Now, okay, that's happened in the past. Now we're saying we want to see the end of the occupation that took place in 1967. The occupation of the 22% of Palestine, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. And that to constitute the unity and the territorial integrity of the land of the state of Palestine. And to live in peace and harmony with all of its neighbors, including the state of Israel. That is peace, on the basis of international law. The UN was created where nations to resolve their disputes through peaceful measures, not through war. That is the lesson of the horror of World War II. So then we're saying, okay, let us, through peaceful measures, allow the Palestinian people to exercise their right to self-determination, including statehood, and including the return of the refugees. And that would constitute what we are saying now, the two-state solution formula. And by the way, today, the two-state solution for a while at the United Nations enjoys global consensus, which is amazing. In all other issues that were dealt with by the UN, there were no consensus on how to resolve them, including now regarding Ukraine, including Vietnam, including Korea. All of them did not enjoy global consensus in resolving them. The question of Palestine, the two-state solution, enjoys global consensus, and we are eager, and the committee is eager and doing everything possible in order we can see that this formula of the two-state solution to become a reality, to implement it. Implementation of the two-state solution require the end of the Israeli occupation to the land of the state of Palestine, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip.
Ambassador Mansour, you mentioned there Ukraine and so forth. It sparks another question, because we see issues of land ownership and territorial claims dominating the media and the news cycles right now. Russia, Ukraine, we see Belize, Guatemala, Israel, Palestine. In any way, are those situations the same? And can you clarify exactly how what is happening in Palestine perhaps differs vastly from those other issues of land ownership or territorial claims?
These situations are not the same. Our case, and I am expert in our case, it, as I said, England from the time of World War I, and when it came and occupied Palestine, it imposed itself as a mandatory power. They did not ask us for that, they imposed it on us. And they covered it with some sugar by saying that we are coming to help the Palestinian people to be ready for independence through the League of Nations. And also they added into that formula a component by saying, by giving a Balfour Declaration to the International Zionist Organization, which in it they said that they want to establish a national Jewish homeland for the Jews in Palestine. The mandatory power, the colonial power, which does not own our land, gives an organization in Europe, the Zionist movement, at the turn of century of last century, to come and establish a homeland for them in Palestine. So therefore, our case, it's complicated in that sense. Now, they might confuse the question is that there is a land dispute between us and the Israelis. We are the indigenous population. We've been there for thousands of years. Many came and many went to our land. We were flexible and mature enough politically to acknowledge that after the horrors of the Holocaust and the Jews that came from Europe mainly, that were seeking refuge in Palestine, and initially we received them with a positive attitude and demonstrated empathy with the horror that they went through at the hands of the Europeans, especially the Germans, through the Holocaust. Then they have designed to almost to take the land from us, and that's what led to the friction. And then at the end, the UN imposed on us the partition. And regardless of whether one wants to argue the justness or lack of it to the Palestinian people in terms of imposing the partition plan, we were able to demonstrate realism and effectiveness that the land that was occupied in 1967, which is the remaining part of historic Palestine, to be the land of our state. We just want to implement what the international community came to the conclusion in 1947, that these two communities need to be in two separate states, regardless of the borders. okay, and adjustment. Although international law and Security Council resolutions are saying that the border of the state of Palestine, which is the border of the 4th of June of 1967, including East Jerusalem, should be the border of the state of Palestine, and on the other side, the borders of the state of Israel. And any adjustment to such borders should be agreed to through negotiation between the two parties. This language is contained in Security Council Resolution 2334. So I'm just giving you a synopsis of our story, which cannot be, compared to other stories which have their own unique character. Ours is now there is a global consensus. Everybody agrees that there should be two states. Everybody agreed, led by Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the UN, that the occupation that started in June 1967 should be stopped. Occupations are of temporary nature. And now the ICJ is handling the issue. What are the legal consequences of a long occupation, which is becoming annexation, which is illegal? And what should the UN and countries do vis-a-vis occupation that is trying to steal the remaining part of Palestine, which is the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip, and the entire international community saying we will not allow that to happen. Israel has to withdraw, and the state of Palestine should enjoy freedom and independence in that part of the land, so that we can create a different reality. Maybe a reality in which the two states, equal, independent, full members at the United Nations, to start living different life away from hostilities, and maybe to build on cooperation, understanding each other, working together like Germany and France, who killed from each other during World War I and World War II, more than all those killed by humanity since the beginning of history. Then they are the two pillars of the European Union. But we cannot move into that promising future unless we allow the Palestinian people to become independent in their own independent state, sovereign state, over the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip, and to allow the refugees to return to their homes and property. That's an inherent right, that it is up to the refugees to decide what to do. If they want to return, that right is granted to them. That is what international law stipulates. If we do these things, then we will usher a new period of peace. Since the beginning of World War I, and we are eager to move in the direction of peace. Who wants to have 35,000 of their people, 15,000 of them children, to be killed as we see in Gaza? We love to have peace because we want to save the lives of our people and our children, and to give them dreams and future to think of, and the great things that they want to do when they grow up. So we want peace. We don't want the continuation of war. And we want every country to help us. I know Guyana is playing a great role in helping us. You have a superstar in the Security Council representing you. She speaks from the bottom of her heart. She's representing you well. All of you who are, as your president said correctly, united in advancing peace, at least for the Palestinian people, as an example. We met with all of your leaders, including representatives in parliament from all the parties, those in government and the opposition. When it comes to the question of Palestine, you are totally united. You are a fabulous example of how all fabrics of your society are totally united around the question of Palestine. If I am a professor at your university, I will write books about this remarkable example, and to teach it in all universities, in all corners of the globe, to see that, look at this model of harmony acceptance and tolerance between all components of the society, and to find that you are united around the question of Palestine. It gives us tremendous amount of pride and gratitude that although our tragedy is unifying all of you in harmony, but yet, although we are paying the ultimate price through the sacrifices of the Palestinian people, but yet from that tragedy there are flowers are flourishing as the experience that we see in Guyana, and we are grateful for that. And we came to say thank you and to ask you, when you ask the question, there are a list of asks that we want from our friends, particularly with regard to recognition of the state of Palestine, like those in Barbados, in Jamaica. We asked the president, help us also with Trinidad. And we were there before coming to your country. And help us with Bahamas. We want to close the circle of all the countries that belong to CARICOM. This is an investment in peace and an investment in defending the two-state solution and making it a reality.
Thank you, Ambassador Mansour, for that clarification and taking us back in history. Very fruitful details there.
You're welcome.
I want to go to you, Ambassador Niang. Specifically, the composition of the committee. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe there are 25 UN member states,
yes.
and we have 24 observers.
Yes.
Let us talk a little bit about the role of the observers in all of this. And then, as Ambassador Mansour just said about Jamaica as well coming out, what does that mean, the recognition of their comments recently that you would have seen in the media, and also the movement of your committee, like you rightfully said, going into countries that perhaps don't even recognize the state of Palestine. How has that been in terms of your advocacy work and ensuring that more countries come on board and understand the magnitude of this issue and recognize the state of Palestine?
Yeah, thank you. I can confirm the numbers you mentioned about the composition of the committee, 25 members, and then we have 24 observers. We hold meetings very regularly. Every year the Bureau is renewed and countries submit candidatures, and we define the program of work, and we do it in a very open and transparent way. So the program of work of the committee is devised by all the members, and part of the program, as I mentioned earlier, are delegation visits targeting countries where we have very specific needs of support. As I said, the case of Guyana was slightly different because of the active role you have been playing. I also wanted to mention that you have not started even being active on the question of Palestine when you joined in 1975. Actually, you started advocating the rights of Palestinians in the 1970s, well before the committee was established. And you have been always there to state very clearly your support for the cause. My colleague mentioned the role your representative, the UN, is playing. She's been a very good advocate of Palestine. She participates in all our meetings, intervening, supporting, and not only on that issue, but on all issues pertaining to international justice and international peace. So this is how the committee functions. So in a very open way. You also mentioned the dynamics we are seeing these days. We are very happy with the dynamics within the region. I think in your region only 2 countries remain, as my colleague said, to close the circle. We have been having very good news about Trinidad, that they might take the decision of joining, and then Bahamas will be maybe the last one. And I'm sure Bahamas, knowing also that they are very supportive of the cause in their statements, they wouldn't be. I wouldn't understand that they will not join. So all in all, I can say that there is a movement of recognition of the cause and a movement of the recognition of the state of Palestine. And my colleague maybe hasn't mentioned it. Even in Europe, we can see that the lines are shifting, and we might even have a recognition from some states in the next days. So I think also the tragedy we are now seeing in Gaza, unfortunately, has rekindled, let's say, the attention of the world on what is going on right now. Maybe there were some tragedies going on, or some wars going on before the tragedy, which put at the back burner the question of Palestine. But more and more we can see more and more empathy coming from many parts of the world. It's a pity that the resolution to recognize Palestine as a state, as a full member of the UN did not pass because of one veto. But I think this should not refrain us from continuing our campaign. And I think we need to do more, and we need to be also optimistic about what we are doing. And remember that at some point, if you look at history, South Africa at some point were in a situation where no one thought that the outcome would come in 1994. And we saw that because of the engagement of many countries of the world, but also the engagement of the grassroots movement, we had a different result. That's why I think that whenever we go also to campaign, we don't only go to campaign with governments, but we also go to campaign with the civil society, with all stakeholders in countries, and trying to also make that grassroots movement which will really create that trend which will liberate Palestine.
May I add, you asked what is the difference between the full members and the observers. There isn't, because all the decisions are adopted by consensus. But there is a technical reason why we have this division. It was intended from the founding fathers in their own wise way that there are so many supporters to Palestine. You don't want to flood the committee from them. For example, the Arab countries, it was agreed, only one country that will be a full member, which is Tunisia. And at that time, Tunisia was the base for the League of Arab States. So they said that then Tunisia would be representing all the Arabs. So you might have 10 observers from the Arab countries, but you don't want to flood the committee with them. And also from the Organization of Islamic Conference. Maybe all of them, the 57, would be interested in becoming full member. So then you take that into account. Some, they have the opportunity to be observers, but others, you take into account to have representation to cover different groups, different geography, Africa, Latin America, Asia. So all these issues come into play, but in reality, there is no difference between them. So that's why we always say that we have 15 members of them, somebody, with 2 stripes, and one maybe with the 2 stripes minus, a little bit. So there is no difference. The other thing is, the committee started in Trinidad and Tobago, and it is not recognizing the state of Palestine, although they vote well in the General Assembly resolutions related to the question of Palestine. We felt that maybe they should take the extra step. And we are hopeful that they will do that. Few years ago, we went to Panama, and we lobbied the Panamanian government, and we almost succeeded in doing that. They had election, things changed. Then it is not on the radar. We asked your president to help us with Panama, especially since Panama is going to be replacing Ecuador in the Security Council. And it would be great if also Panama to join the others in your region, almost everyone. We have only maybe 4 or less in the entire region of Latin America and the Caribbean who have not recognized the state of Palestine, 2 in CARICOM, and 1 is Panama. So then we might even contemplate the committee, if we have the time, to go to Panama again in preparation for playing our role with new members of the Security Council, to court them and to have, through arguments and discussions, to invite them, to join others in recognizing the state of Palestine. They might do it before even they join the Security Council. We hope they do. As other European countries like Spain and Ireland, who are about ready to take that step, all these things are investment in peace and saving the two-state solution and getting us a bit closer to the end line of freedom and dignity for the Palestinian people in our free and independent state of Palestine.
I just wanted to add one thing.
Oh, please.
You know, when we met President Ali, we were really pleased, even before we raised the question, when he informed us that he had been talking to his peers in the region and even beyond, even in the Middle East, to try to really promote the Palestinian rights. So we were very pleased by that. And we are very confident that he will continue doing it.
Okay.
And in the Caribbean and Latin American community, the recognition made by Jamaica and Barbados is a great triumph. As you know, 10 years ago, the head of government of the Caribbean and Latin American community proclaiming Havana, Latin America and Caribbean as a zone of peace. And as Brother Mansoud mentioned before, that's what we have been promoting, to invest in peace through the recognition of the Palestinian state.
Yeah.
And before Barbados and the Jamaica last year, it was Mexico.
Yes.
And that is big and important. It's one of the biggest countries, the last one of the biggest countries that took that decision. So as you see, everybody is believing in recognizing the state of Palestine as an investment in peace and the two-state solution.
We have just about 5 minutes remaining in this program. Very wonderful discussion, learning so much from this conversation. This is two-part, specifically on the case of the over 100 million Ghana dollars that was raised for the state of Palestine. What does that represent for the people of Palestine? I want to go around the room to get all of your comments in. And the second part of my question is, what is the hope of the committee for the resolution of this situation that we are seeing exacerbating every day? So we could start with you, Ambassador Guzman, and then make our way to the chair,
Yes.
and then to be the end of the program.
I think that this is the time to support and give off all of our solidarity to the Palestinian people. That's what your people did, and we think that in the future, sooner than later, we hope that the Palestinian state become as a sovereign state, and I think that will be this is the future for us.
The money of UNRWA represents two important things for us.